The Willow series on Disney Plus is yet another amazing 2022 fantasy production. The message of the 1988 Willow film was that people with enough perseverance and willpower can achieve anything they set their mind to, no matter how tall or important one is. It's a movie about a man of small stature who is brave and strong and a compassionate father, and strong women on whom the fate of the world depends. An entertaining high fantasy film without a doubt. Yes, but the film also had its problems. We all know by now that male characters that, especially in modern fantasy and superhero productions, are actually taken seriously or play important roles, are all synonymous with toxicity across the board, without wanting to fall back on any prejudices here. Luckily, Disney has solved this and all other problems for us in the new Willow series, adapting the story a bit more for the modern zeitgeist. What exactly is meant by that we will show in the next few minutes. Warning, there are spoilers ahead. Thanks for tuning in. The story begins with the introduction of a very likable young princess named Kit, who doesn't think much of herself and is very humble.
You know, there's skill, then there's talent. And I just happen to have both. You know, who knows, maybe in a few years you might actually beat me. I'm just better at that than you are.
So we realize relatively quickly that Willow will no longer play the main character, even though the series is actually named after him. In general, all male characters in the series are either incompetent idiots or incompetent villains. But Kit is a character that we, as an audience, want to identify with immediately. Whereas Willow in the 1988 film was selfless and willing to risk his life for a greater cause, Kit has a severe narcissistic personality disorder and is as well selfish and self-centered. She's a princess and she has a right to get what she wants. And if she doesn't get it, she's willing to risk the peace of the kingdom immediately. But one thing at a time. In one of the first scenes of episode 1, Kit practices her sword fighting skills with a friend who is played by an actress who has a similarly rich range of different facial expressions in the series as Galadriel has in Rings of Power. In any case, we learn two things. That the two like each other a lot, and that they are boss ladies who can later easily take on any man in any sword fight, even if he weighs twice as much and has twice as many muscles. Neither of the two has had any special combat training as we are told in the series, or any special powers. No, they're just more or less ordinary young women. But it's important to show us that women are strong because otherwise we, as an audience, couldn't understand that. But wait a minute. Is the only way to give female characters important roles in film and television productions nowadays to more or less pretty much let them all simply become men? And at the same time take away characteristics from them such as mental stamina, discipline, patience, empathy, elegance, and above all, intelligence? Isn't it almost a bit derogatory towards everyone involved to think that female characters can only be taken seriously by the audience if, more and more often, they are limited to beating people up all the time and behaving in a way that no normal woman, or no normal person in general, would ever behave in real life? But no, that's nonsense. The audience loves the Willow series.
Wow!
Kit's mother, by the way, is Saoirse, who plays a weak, almost pathetic character in the 1988 Willow film. She doesn't really have any skills other than leading the army of the largest, most important empire in the world and ultimately playing a very important role in overthrowing the evil sorceress. But otherwise she has practically no function and is constantly belittled by the men around her, because she's just weak and shows something like feelings for a man. Saoirse has meanwhile become the ruler of the country and is the mother of 2 children, of which Kit is one. Kit is clearly the one wearing the pants, while her brother Eric is an incompetent dreamer who is more interested in women than anything else. Especially in one woman, Dav, who is a kitchen maid and is well known in the castle for baking such good muffins. That's why she's actually called Muffin Girl. But isn't the story taking place in a medieval world? And doesn't Wikipedia say that the term muffins first appeared only in the 18th century? But it doesn't really matter if the kitchen maid has nothing in common with a kitchen maid anyway. Talks to the members of the royal family like a 2020s woman with her BFFs on WhatsApp and acts like she's a part of the royal gang from the start. The gang, in general, by the way, doesn't talk any differently, as if they were fresh off the set of Emily in Paris. Realistic representation of characters adapted to the time in which the story is supposed to take place is just great. Remember the maid, she will be important again later. And let's talk a little more about realistic representations. Princess Kit is to be married off to a prince from another kingdom because her mother wants to strengthen her kingdom and ensure peace. But Kit doesn't like that at all. When Kit finds out, she yells at her mother, asking her who she actually thinks she is. that Kit wouldn't marry if she didn't feel like it, and how the mother would dare to ask such a sacrifice of Kit for such a small thing as peace and unity. The mother, the queen, who could have anyone she wants thrown into the dungeon if they disobeyed her commands. During such conversations, one forgets again and again, we are still in a medieval world, not in a modern soap. But I think it's good that actors behave that way and keep using words like hobbies and okay. After all, who really watches a fantasy series to lose themselves in another world? Nobody, of course. Better to keep reminding us of things like forced marriages are bad. For most of us Disney Plus subscribers, that won't have been entirely clear until we watched the series. Thanks for the clarification. In her anger about her mother, the queen, daring to rule over her, Kit starts bullying the rather unassuming, shy prince from the other kingdom, whom she's supposed to marry, who keeps saying he's a loser and everyone else around him tells him exactly the same thing. Also, Kit is preparing to get violent towards a bunch of people, practically risking a war between two kingdoms because among those gathered is the king of the other country. Yep, she's apparently supposed to represent a modern, strong woman for Lucasfilm/Disney. But everything turns out differently than expected in the end because the queen's castle is attacked by a group of monsters and Prince Eric, Kit's brother, is kidnapped. Saoirse, the queen, soon sends a squad after him. And of course her daughter Kit is a part of it too, although Kit is basically Saoirse's heir, and Saoirse, should anything happen to both of her children, would be left with virtually no heirs, but whatever. Also a part of the rescue group is Kit's bosom friend with a rich array of facial expressions, and a host of quite incompetent men, including the loser prince whom Kit is supposed to marry. Why exactly? Good question. In any case, they all go together to save Eric, and that's where the kitchen maid comes in, because she had an affair with Eric, and so she also wants to save him because she loves him and she's convinced that he loves her too. Therefore, she secretly follows the group and eventually joins them. To do this, she swapped her kitchen maid's robe for a new, perfectly fitting adventurous robe, because in the Middle Ages, kitchen maids simply had that ready at any time, if they wanted to go horseback riding on the weekend or something, when they wanted to use the compensatory time off. Neither Princess Kit nor her royal friends actually question the presence of the kitchen maid for long. They argue for a while as if they were complete equals, not that there was any kind of hierarchy in a medieval court, and the kitchen maid doesn't let anyone tell her anything because she too is a strong, independent woman. Will she play an important role later because the screenwriters obviously insist on bringing her into the story? In any case, they all go to Willow's village together, because Willow is the last wizard alive and the only one who can help the group in the search for Prince Eric and in the fight against the monsters. Upon arriving in the village, Willow announces that the kitchen maid they have with them is none other than Elora Dunham, the baby from the 1988 film, who is supposedly the only one with enough magic inside of her to really have a chance defeating the evil monsters. I love the scene during Willow's speech and how the faces of the group members are shown, and how we as an audience are meant to be moved and excited by the facial expressions. It's just so well done, because that's how storytelling works. Completely bland and superficial, and above all, emotionally cold characters always trigger strong emotions in the audience. But what do I mean by emotionally cold here? Well, the group was originally accompanied by a knight who said of himself that he had known Prince Eric since the prince was born, and that Eric was like a son to him. So, in all likelihood, Kit, too, had known him since she was a child. Anyway, the knight gets killed on the way to Willow's village, but no one in the group, literally no one, really seems to care. Nobody talks about the knight again. Instead, an incredibly funny, humorous scene follows immediately after his death, and then the characters just move on as if nothing had happened. Well, not that we really expected Kit to express some serious, realistic emotions. And besides, the series shouldn't be too gloomy, right? In any case, they all move on together to look for Prince Eric, and Willow goes with them. In order not to risk the focus drifting away from the incredibly likable female characters, the series keeps telling us that Willow is basically no good as a magician anyway, and that he uses more sleight of hand than real magic.
But you're not a great sorcerer, and you never will be.
But I did it all, and I do it all again to save Eric, not take wizard classes from you.
Stay back. I'm warning you.
Oh, you're what? Do your old disappearing pig trick?
Only when the script needs it, Willow is suddenly able to destroy monsters with a single spell. Otherwise, he's portrayed as generally rather hard of understanding. He often seems to simply forget that he could use magic in problem situations, and needs to be constantly reminded of it. Furthermore, none of the characters really take him seriously, and some characters keep telling him pretty nasty things, never tiring of pointing out his apparent incompetence. God, how I love this series. As a viewer, you almost never have the feeling that you are presented with a bullshit story and that the main focus of the screenwriters seems to be somehow breaching the 45-minute runtime per episode because they have no idea how to tell a coherent, gripping story. For example, once, when the former kitchen maid Elora, on the run in the forest, meets two women in a hut, one of whom is called Hubert. Yes, seriously, Hubert. For 15 whole minutes, Hubert tells us that she will destroy every man who is after Elora, only to be killed after a 20-second fight by the first soldier who crosses her path. Or the dialogues in which Elora doesn't want to start her magician training because it simply doesn't suit her at the moment and she doesn't feel like it, even though she's told that the future of the world depends on it. And then, when she finally agrees to train, it seems like it's all a joke to her. Another thing the characters like to do is to be rude to one another out of nowhere. For example, these two lovebirds, who by the way don't really appear to have any better chemistry with each other than Nicki Minaj and Miley Cyrus.
Miley, what's good?
But between them, an incredibly gripping conflict is now developing. It's about the fact that the bosom friend with the complex facial expressions always let Kit win in the sword fight drills back in the castle to make Kit feel good, and now Kit's honor is offended and she's angry. Does this have anything to do with the main story? Does this storyline accomplish anything other than showing us yet again that Kit has an ego problem? As a viewer, you simply can't help but want to learn more about this fascinating character. As you can see, the intelligence with which the series was written is all-encompassing. So all-encompassing that we've only watched until episode 4 so far, and then had to stop because it was too emotionally upsetting, let's call it that. Not much happens until the 4th episode. The group is still searching for the brother, taking us from one incredibly important side story like the ones I mentioned to the next. In any case, it's already certain without a doubt that the Willow series is an absolute masterpiece. An incredible achievement for Lucasfilm and fantasy productions in general. A new highlight when it comes to the portrayal of likable, strong characters, an accurate depiction of the Middle Ages, and a good, coherent story. If you want to learn something for life, if you want to learn how dangerous it is to spoil your children too much and not to show them any boundaries, then this series is for you. Otherwise, House of the Dragon would probably be a more reasonable alternative. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, you as well might enjoy our other video about The Witcher Blood Origin, another fantasy series that's practically devoid of any identity politics and is perfect to get lost in. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.